Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
they lean on those incident points. The S1 Series makes its debut here on Apex Racing TV. We've got a full field of 22 GT3 cars here about to set off at Sebring. We're going to see the Porsche pace car make that hard right turn to go into the pit lane, and the green flag will come out, and the drivers will be on their way now. It's the number 115 driver there of Hovenson getting a fantastic start there and jumping ahead, but it's not over yet. We're going to see the number 044 look for a move going into the inside, but thankfully for our pole sitter, he will maintain the lead coming through the first corner there, but it's not over yet. We have a lot of side-by-side action going on farther in the back. There's a lot of action at this point.
Yeah, Hovenson had the start he needed. He takes the lead. Bellinger still behind, and the two have started to open a gap to the rest of the field. But now, moving around the outside, Brandon Johnson. Is he out there? No, I think that maybe Justin Hall. Still 2 wide, maybe 3 wide. Someone looking down the inside. That is a very risky move. Who else than Justin Dive Bomber Barrera to make the move into the corner down the inside? A little dive bomb, but no damage inflicted and no harm done. He's up to 7th. But we still have that 3-car Porsche lead, followed by 3 Ferraris. The BMW trio split with Finley running in 8th, as Finley is looking to chase down Barrera right here.
I think we saw another very smart move there from Bialotta. It looked like he was going to go for the dive going into, I believe that was turn 10 actually, so we're seeing some BMWs go for some very aggressive moves now. But right now we're switching our attention to the battle up towards the front. It's between Hovenson and Bellinger. These drivers are still very close coming through turn 14 there. So I think Bellinger, he might be a little bit impatient. I think he's going to try and get that lead and get the clean air on the front end of that Porsche. I think he's going to get sick and tired of seeing the back of that 115. We're seeing some drivers mow the lawn coming onto the Ullman straightaway coming through turn 16. We might see some lawn clipping all throughout this race, but we're seeing some close racing here. I believe these drivers are going side by side. Yes, they are going side by side as they go through Sunset Bend of turn 17, the final corner on the Sebring track. But it's a complete lap 1 here for season 2 of the S1 GT3 series. Is Hovenson your pole position driver, maintaining the lead on lap 1.
Yeah, looking into that final corner, Bellinger tried to move down the inside, but didn't have the space to complete it. But he's got some time to catch up. He's still going to get a nice little benefit from the slipstream of Hovenson, about half a second back. And already they're about a second up on Johnson, Luther, and the rest of the grid. And looking down, 4 seconds separate 3rd place Johnson and 9th place Hall.
Now, still a very close field right now, even though we're 1 lap into this race. Right now, the field is still separated by less than 13 seconds, which compared to Formula 1, it feels like you could put a blanket over everyone. You've got trains forming all over the place. You've got pelotons. You've got drivers going farther in the back. They're going side by side. I believe that's Brandon Letsky battling for the 21st position. They're going side by side as the rest of the field starts to pull away from them, so they'll have a nice scrap there for the final 2 positions. But right now, we've got battles all up and down the field. It's nice to have some interclass battling, which is always a nice, I guess you could call it a quirk as well. The quirks and features of GT3 racing. You have intercar battling, but we have some same car battling. We've got a BMW Civil War going on right now between De Hinza and Cassano there. Those drivers go side by side coming through the turn 9, 11, and 12. Sorry, the turn 9, 10, 11, and 12 section. My apologies there. And those two BMW drivers are battling very hard at this stage, so a lot of hard battling at this stage. A lot of these drivers are really trying to force the issue very early on to this 45-minute race.
Yeah, they've got some time to fight, but also if you can get a few positions early on before things really separate, that can certainly give you an advantage. So expect the 010 to try to take down the fellow BMW. Maybe not a lot of room going down into this next corner, but could try to find something over the rest of the lap.
We'll have to wait and see. What we saw in the preseason race a few weeks ago at Red Bull Ring is these drivers are very opportunistic, but there's not an opportunistic move. He is making, that's the Hinza there, making some leeway on Cassano after he went very wide coming through turn 17. I mean, a small little mistake there. It's very easy to make a mistake. We're seeing some more side-by-side action farther up. The field is in the top 10. There's a battle between Dive Bomb and Finley, I believe. Actually, no, that's... Actually, yeah, that's Hall and Finley. My apologies there. So those drivers are battling, and now the other Porsche there of Skalny is getting involved in this fight as well. We've got 4-car battle here right now, 3 laps into this race. We're only nearly 5 minutes into this race, but we already have a lot of side-by-side action, a lot of action, and not a lot of incidents so far. Knowing my luck, I probably just commentators curse the entire field, but so far, very clean for these drivers. It's been some impressive racing to kick this season off.
I was just about ready to say that. I was expecting Scaldi maybe to get into contact with Finley right when you brought that up for no incidents. But yeah, it seems like no one's had any major spins or issues so far as we take a look at Luther trying to defend against Atrill as they head into this next corner. A pretty exciting fight between these 3 Ferraris. And oh, we do have a problem. Barrera. Nope, Barrera's good. I think he just disconnected for half a second. I saw the scoreboard position showing that he was going all the way down, but no, just a good blink, which is good because he is still in 7th and still fighting about a second and a half behind these dueling Ferraris.
I was gonna feel so bad if my commentators cursed him that quickly. I would have felt like an absolute you-know-what after that happened, but thankfully for him, it was just a simple disconnect. But right now, some very clean racing up and down the field. I believe we haven't had many incident points for these drivers, so they've kept it clean, kept it smooth, and it's been awesome to watch so far. Lots of battling all up and down the field, regardless of whether these drivers are battling in the top 10 or whether they're battling outside the top 20. These drivers have put on some fantastic racing so far, and it's still been very close all up and down the field, but the standout driver right now is Hovesen, who started from the pole, maintained the lead at the start despite a small little challenge from Bellinger up at the beginning of the race. But he has actually extended the gap now, right now 1.1 seconds, separating the first 2 drivers, and that's really the biggest gap all throughout this field. Just looking through my live timing screen, you've got gaps below a second for pretty much half of the grid, maybe even more than half the grid. Probably 2/3 of the grid has a car within a second of them. So there's some fantastic stuff to watch so far. What do you think, Taylor?
Yeah, I agree. And even at the bottom of the field, 20, 21st, and 22nd, there are 3 seconds back from the true peloton, as you'd probably call it. But they're still battling each other. I've been looking at the scoreboard. They've been flip-flopping sometimes. In fact, the largest gap between any drivers really close to each other has to be Hovesen and Bellinger. The gap is now at 1.3, 1.2, 8, and 7. It's staying about even, but Hovesen was 4/10 faster last time here at Sebring. But yeah, so much close action early on. They are small little packs, but a lot of racing in each one.
These 2 drivers are definitely in a class of their own at the moment. Looking over our live timing boards, they're the only ones to break to set a lap time below the 2-minute barrier right now. So we've got Bellinger setting a fastest lap right now at a 1:59.5, and then Hovesen at a 1:59.1. So 4/10 of a second have separated them last lap, and they've also separated them in their best laps as well. So these drivers are still maintaining the pace. They're still setting lap times below that 2-minute barrier, and we bring up the fastest lap because that still rewards championship points. But never mind that, I believe we have an issue from Atrill there, who's falling down the order. He was running firmly in the top 10, but I believe he's now dropped down to 16th. So not sure what happened there. Might have been a mistake coming through the very tight and very challenging section coming through the end of this circuit. We'll get a replay to see what happened here.
Yeah, I caught it at the back of the pack as we were watching this lead fight. Coming into this corner right here, we see Atrill just gets it wrong and goes around.
Oh, it's such an easy mistake. That section of the track is really dusty. It's a little bit offline. If you just drop a wheel off there, it'll cost you dearly. Good thing he keeps it out of the barriers, because it's definitely very easy to clip that end of the barrier. It kind of gives you a false sense of promise there as you try and turn that car around. But thankfully for Simon, he keeps that car rolling, but that's going to cost him dearly. Right now he is running down in 16th position. After the battling that he was doing, he's going to have to make up quite a lot of time to get back into that fight.
Yeah, it's a costly mistake, but if there's any saving grace, it happened early in the race where he has time to fight back and get back into it. Meanwhile, last place, Dinza in the pits, having a bit of an issue. Hopefully they can get back on the track, but not looking good at the moment.
And that's unfortunate. I believe he was farther towards the tail end of the field, was battling, I believe, a little bit earlier, but now he is dropped out of the race. That's unfortunate, but never mind that. We're seeing some battling here between the Ferrari of Finley and the Porsche there of Scalinli. And those drivers are extremely close coming through. I believe that was turn 10 that they were battling. And now we've got the BMW behind of Bialata there. We've got a nice pack here. We've got just a bunch of cars that you can cover with a blanket, really. It's just very close at this stage, and just some shuffling here and there. It's kind of like watching the speed skating events at the Olympics, where just occasionally they'll shuffle. But I think a lot of these drivers, I think what their game plans might be right now is just to tick down the laps, get towards the end, because I mean we're still less than 10 minutes into this 45-minute race, so we still have plenty of time left for these drivers to make a solid impression. And unfortunately, one driver that hasn't made a solid impression is Admiral. Bless his heart, he's the series admin, but he has had a very shocking series of events. He's now dropped down to last, so it might have had another mistake coming through that corner, through the corner before they go onto the Ullman straightaway of turn 16. That's very unfortunate for him, but right now we're seeing some more tense battling here. When I saw Bialata go a little wide coming through the final corner of turn 17, the Sunset Bend, I was wondering if he had a car down the inside of him, but no, that was just a simple little mistake. And with the bumpy nature of that corner, it is very easy to make a mistake in these very heavy and very big GT3 cars, as we're seeing some shuffling farther towards the back.
Yeah, can confirm Attrell had another incident. Unclear about what damage he has. He looks back to racing pace now, but 38 seconds back from Brown in 21st. That is not the goal you want to start out the season if you are the head of the league. And you can see the damage on the front of his car. However, doesn't look to be affecting him that much. He's keeping around the same pace as the leaders, only leading about a tenth of a second. And now we're going to look at the replay of what has happened as he comes through this corner. Is it going to be a similar spin like before?
I believe we're coming through turn 15 now. Very easy corner to make a mistake, and unfortunately, if he just held the brakes there, he probably would have kept it out of the barriers, but I'm sure he was feeling a little bit frustrated after making two mistakes in pretty much the exact same spot 2 laps in a row. So unfortunately for Simon Attrell, that's going to cost him badly. The front downforce on that car was basically non-existent at that point, looking more like a NASCAR modified than a Ferrari GT3 car. And that's one thing we might have to keep our eyes on for those familiar with iRacing. That Ferrari that he's driving is still new to this game. Actually, it's a sim. I know referring to it as a game will annoy some people, but oh well. We're seeing some nice battling here involving one of those Ferraris and also a Porsche as well. This is a battle that we've been following for the past few laps, and there's a car spinning off farther behind. I'm not sure who that was. I believe that is... yeah, that's Adelatus there making a mistake in the Ferrari. So a lot of Ferraris making mistakes at this stage. I was going to mention how the Ferraris, from what I've seen, do not respond very well to the curbs. So I might make a hypothesis here and say that the curbs at the Sebring track might be the reason why these Ferraris are spinning off left, right, and center.
Certainly wouldn't be surprised. And the battling continuing down the long straight. It looks like the Ferrari of Finley able to hold on for the moment, but he's got a Porsche and BMW to deal with. Skalny looking for a run. He now has the inside for this next set of corners.
Skalny looking
on
for
the curb, and he's got the move just for now, and it's another left-hander. That'll help him out, but expect a challenge from the Ferrari going back down this straightaway now.
This battle is one to watch, and as these drivers start to battle even more, the other two drivers behind them of Bialata and Pern are definitely going to get involved in this fight as well. See some very close stuff there. Unfortunately, Admiral has towed back to the pits. So unfortunate the two Ferraris right now are the last two drivers on track right now. So that's definitely a shame for them. They drop out of the top 20 and will definitely be out of contention for this race. Just a lot of mistakes from the Ferraris, a lot of Ferraris going off. I think the Ferrari this season just does not respond very well with curbs, but that was definitely not curb related. That was contact there from the 938 going into the corner, but then, yeah, I think that wasn't curb involved at all. He was probably a foot away from the curb, and unfortunately for him, just made a simple little mistake, got on the gas a little bit too early. And unfortunately for Adelatus, that's going to cost him badly very early on this opening round.
Yeah, just a bit of contact, fighting through one of the corners, and just couldn't save it in time. Adelatus now down in 17th, still ahead of the people at the bottom, and it looks like Attrell actually may have retired from the race completely with another incident as well. Dinza may be able to get an overtake eventually, as Dinza did return to the track, but now is the lapped driver.
Yeah, just a lot of just it's been chaos in this race, and it's definitely not bad chaos. We've only had a few incidents, but it's just been action-packed racing all up and down this field. There's a great fight that we've been watching for the past few laps. And it was 2 cars, then became 3. Now it's turning into a 5 or 6 car battle. This is getting absolutely nuts here, farther towards the end of the top 10 and right towards the end of the teens. So these drivers are still very close, and I gotta imagine if these drivers start battling any harder than they already are, I think the drivers even farther behind. You look back, maybe Adelatis could get involved in that. Actually, probably not Adelatis could get involved in this battle. He's a bit too farther behind. But I think drivers like Paul Joseph Kliss, currently running in P16, is a little bit farther back of that battle. But I still think that he'll be looking very good. If those drivers start battling even harder, I think he might get involved in that fight, because they've just been fighting tooth and nail very early on. Maybe it's just me from a broadcaster's perspective. Certainly as a driver myself, I can understand both sides of it. Some drivers want to push really hard, go for all-out glory, but at this stage of the race right now, only 15 minutes in to this 45-minute race, we still have half an hour left to go. So I think some of these drivers might be starting to realize that it might just be good to stay behind, stay in that slipstream, and just wait for the final 15 minutes to start planning your assault.
Yeah, and I have to see what Johnson's doing here, but Johnson may be looking for the place now. About 0.13 behind, 1/10, following very close through this set of corners. And now we're on board, backing up to give a little space to breathe, potentially set up something, getting ready for this back straight.
Definitely probably the most important corner on this track, turn 16, with a very long run going down the back straightaway. And still, turn 17, Sunset Bend, is very important on this track as well. You've got many important corners on this circuit that these drivers are taking very different lines through. This is one of them. It's a very nice corner in terms of racing, because you can go side by side through there, but you also have some different strategies you can go through. You can focus on entry, you could focus on exits, you could focus on just carrying as much speed as you possibly can through there to get a fantastic run coming onto the start-finish straightaway and going into turn 1, which for these GT3 cars is still a very fast corner. They're still hauling the mail coming through there, and unfortunately a driver that's hauling the mail back to the pits is Pern, who's currently in 14th. Not sure if that's a connection issue or if he actually had a mistake that might have been coming through either turn 1 or the final corner. I believe, yes, he has towed back to the pits. So unfortunately for Pern, another mistake from a Ferrari. The Ferraris have been dropping like flies very early on. I think we might get a replay very soon. Thank you, Josh. We'll get a chance to see what happened here. That was Letsky there. That was a very intriguing shot there. Unfortunately, my view is glitched out right now.
And now it's Purin as we're taking a look at the incident going down the inside. Narrowly avoids contact. Interesting. Could have been maybe a very early scheduled stop. But yeah, just some very hard racing in terms of the replay with Purin.
It's always great to get a good view of some hard racing, because, I mean, we've just had barrelfuls of it at this stage. It's just been awesome stuff. You see a little dust cloud farther in the back. A driver might have dipped their tire into the red Florida clay coming out of turn 13. That's always a very tricky corner. If anyone's driven an IndyCar through there, they know it's just, you're bouncing through there. You feel it going through your spine. Even in the sim, ooh, that was a very interesting line coming through turn 16 there for Johnson behind in that Porsche. That was, I believe, all 4 tires. I think definitely the left side tires off onto the dirt. I believe all 4 tires off the racing line, so that could count as a 1X. We'll just have to wait and see. But right now, some very close stuff here. I think the battles throughout the field have definitely sizzled out a little bit. I think, as I was saying a few laps ago, these drivers are finally realizing that it's just best to tick the laps down and just wait it out, because it's just been, these drivers have been battling so hard and they've been using their stuff up, and we've seen so many mistakes in the past few laps, which I blame partially on myself, because I said, oh yeah, these drivers are not really showing any mistakes, and right as I say that, a lot of drivers start to go off, and all of them being Ferraris. So not really sure what's been going on here. Maybe there's something in the Ferrari interiors letting out some weird gases getting to these drivers' brains that's causing them to make a lot of mistakes very early on.
Meanwhile, someone who hasn't been making mistakes, Gregory Hovesen, he has been on another level. Recently just set a 1:59.39, a very comfortable 5, maybe soon to be 6-second gap over Bellinger, but Bellinger finding a little more pace as well, just set a 1:59.85, and Bellinger and Hovesen still in a field of their own. They are 11 seconds up on third place. There's 6 seconds between Bellinger and Hovesen.
Right now, it looks, as you can see at the bottom end of your screen, yeah, the gap has closed up a little bit in this lap, and I think we might see some more lap traffic, so that could be the reason why, yeah, the gap has spread out a little bit, well, actually closed up a little bit, I'm mixing up all my words, between those two drivers, is because, yeah, the Ferrari that we saw a little bit of, I'm not sure who that is, that could be, I believe maybe Simon Attrell or Pern possibly that's getting involved in this. Actually, I believe that's De Hinza, correct me if I'm wrong there, that is right now in risk of getting lapped here. I believe that is the... Yes, that is De Hinza, as you can see from the blue text on the left-hand side of your screen on our SDK Gaming overlay here. De Hinza at a risk of losing his lap fairly early on into this race. We're 20 minutes in, 11 laps, about to start lap 12 here.
Still a pretty aggressive fight between third and fourth. Johnston knocking on the door, but Luther keeping it closed with a big block up high. Gives him just a little space as they go into the next turn. So definitely some hard and aggressive racing. They're 3 seconds up on Olsen, Barrera, and Hall in 5th, 6th, and 7th, who are a little further spaced out. There'd be a DRS for Barrera over fighting Olsen if they did have DRS on these GT3 cars.
Right now, the field's spreading out a little bit. The action, I wouldn't say it's dulled down a lot because we still have some nice battling here between these two drivers, but I think during this slight lull in the race, we'll touch on some of the points we mentioned in the pre-race. Unfortunately, because of technical issues, the viewers weren't able to hear us very early on, so I'll briefly go over some of the other interesting quirks and features of the series. I think Doug DeMuro fans will appreciate that reference there. And this series has fixed setups. It has a 20 incident point limit, and then the drivers will incur a penalty. So if you hear us badgering on a little bit about drivers going off track, that could be the reason why, because in a 45-minute race, it's very easy to accrue those incident points. So that will be something that we'll have to keep an eye on throughout this season. I briefly went over the schedule, and I'll just say that next week we'll be running at Road America, another fantastic American racetrack, at the same time here on Apex Racing TV at 9:10 Eastern Time. I believe that's 6:10 Pacific Time. So if you want to tune in for some more awesome GT3 action, you know where to do. And if you want to get an even more GT3 fix here on Apex, you can tune into the ARL GT3 Trophy, the Apex Racing League GT3 Trophy, which is another fantastic series using these GT3 cars. I've had the privilege to commentate on that as well. And we've had some fantastic racing, and we have some fantastic championship fights between the Pro, Pro-Am, and the Am categories. So that'll be fantastic to watch. So if you want to tune into that next race at Donington Park this upcoming Tuesday, that will be at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I believe that is 12 noon West Coast time. So if you'd like to tune into that, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button here on Apex Racing TV to stay up to date on this fantastic racing action, certainly here in the S1 series. Even though we've only seen the first 22 minutes of this series, it's been some fantastic stuff so far.
It really has, and we are just about to approach the halfway period of this race, because 45 minutes about to reach within another minute or two. Yeah, a lot of fighting to go, but Barrera, is that another quick lag dropout, or is that something a little more serious falling down the order?
I think that might be something serious there. He's dropping back even farther, so right now 13th. Oh, nope, and there we go. It's a small little glitch out on our end, so he drops, drops down to 13th and pops back up to 6th. So thankfully for Dive Bomb Barrera, he manages to stay in this race. Some technical issues, so maybe some drivers are running serial box Wi-Fi routers at this stage.
Yeah, certainly, but looks like a majority of the field has been all right. It's always tough to race against someone who's blinking from time to time, but the good news is for Barrera, it's been fewer and farther between, and the only driver in real danger of that is currently Hall, who is 0.5 of a second behind, and then further up the road, Skalny and Finley are each 7 and 8 seconds back.
Very close battling. I think these drivers are, as I said a few laps ago, I think they're trying to save up their stuff at this stage. We're kind of in the midway lull in the race, so drivers are still very close. Definitely a lot closer than any action you've seen in Formula 1 this season, that's for damn sure. And it's another lag dropout possibly from Ballinger, who's been running second place all throughout this race.
He actually looks like he's making his scheduled pit stop. I'd assume it would be scheduled. I don't think he'd be going for an unscheduled pit stop unless there was a serious issue like a penalty. But yeah, no, a few other people coming in now, Sconley and Finley. So these are the first few pit stops. It'll be important to watch some of the outlaps and inlaps with those closer packs.
We'll also have to see if Ballinger can pull off the undercut here on Hoverson, who's been pretty dominant throughout this race. He's had a very quiet race up towards the front, just been ticking down the laps and still running very quick. I'll check my live timing screen real quick, but I believe he is still setting lap times deep into the under 2-minute barrier right now. Last lap was only about 0.03 of a second, actually 0.02 of a second slower than his best lap in this race. So that is very good stuff from the Canadian driver. So he's still showing some fantastic pace, but this will be a very important outlap here from the driver that was formerly running in P2 of Ballinger in that Porsche. We'll have to see what he does in this outlap, and we'll have to see if Hoverson comes into the pits at the end of this lap as well.
Yeah, bad news for Ballinger. Slower pit stop, 18 seconds in the box, 49 seconds in pit lane in total, compared for the fastest total pit time of Purin at 46.50. Finley's had the fastest pit stop at 14.8, so that'll make the undercut a little bit harder for Ballinger, but let's see how he's lapping as he gets his tires warmed back up in P13. And so far, just a few drivers having pit. A few more should be coming soon. We see Brown, who recently came into pit in 20th. Pretty comfortable P20 at the moment. And now we've got Hoverson coming in, and I assume the rest of the field should be following.
I'll have to monitor that gap right now. It's about 48 seconds between Hoverson and Ballinger, so he'll definitely lose the lead at this stage. Ticks past lap 14, so he'll lead the first 14 laps of this race. But actually, I say that most of the drivers behind him have pulled in. Luther, Johnson, Olsen has pulled in, so Dive Bomb Barrera has actually stayed out, so I believe he will take the lead of this race in that BMW, but only time will tell when he comes into the pits. Right now, we're following Jesse Olsen in the Ferrari there. He was your pro champion from last season, so he's looking to defend that championship here, but right now he's put together a fairly quiet race, and Hoverson right now exiting the pits. I believe he is going to be well clear of Ballinger, who right now is 27 seconds gap of the lead, and about 12 seconds off of Hoverson, so Hoverson manages to exit the pits with an even bigger lead than before.
Yeah, Hoverson, 12-second gap to Ballinger in net P2 at the moment. But yeah, 4 other drivers in that lead group of 6 haven't pit yet. Barrera will have a chance to lead a lap, depending on how long he stays out. But Justin Hall may be thinking about a chance to try to take the lead and a lead lap point potentially as well. Only 4/10 behind. We'll actually have a little bit of a battle for the current lead as we continue.
Yeah, just some very close stuff here. We've got some intercar mingling here with the BMWs. We've seen some BMW battling all throughout this race. We saw it earlier with some drivers getting very close, very up close and personal. I believe that was actually Cassano and De Hinza as well, so that was some close battling there as they've now actually pulled into the pit. So we've got some more BMW battling. This time it's for the lead. First time we've seen the lead battle ever since about lap 1 when those two drivers up towards the front start to spread out a little bit. So right now we've got Barrera and Hall battling. We'll have to see if they come into the pits. That'll definitely be the smart move. These drivers are probably running low on tires. Their tires are probably screaming in pain at a track like this with 17 corners that are not very easy on tires. I think those tires are definitely in for a change here by the time they come into the pits. We'll see in a few moments time whether both of these drivers file in, and we might see Alvis, the AM champion from last year. Yes, those drivers going very slowly coming around Sunset Bend, turn 17, and they do file into the pits, so we might see Alvis possibly stay out and take the lead. We'll have to see. We might get a good view of it coming through. No, he actually comes into the pits as well. So your AM champion from last season comes into the pits along with the front driver. So it's going to be Hoverson, I believe, retaking the lead here. He gave up that lead for 1 lap, and then at the start of lap 16, he takes it back.
Ballinger will be moving up and overtaking the drivers on pit road. But yeah, pretty quickly back in the lead for Hovesen and has continued to extend that gap. So yeah, certainly something exciting for Hovesen. A Porsche 1-2 staying intact. Luther up in P3 now, having previously pitted. Inherits a true P3 at the moment.
I believe Olsen actually made a pretty good leeway there. I believe he was running in about just outside the top 5, I believe, maybe just barely in the top 5, 5th or 6th. I'm not sure what position he was running in, but he moves up into P4, so that's very good news for him as he gets into the 4th position right now. He has a little bit of time to close in to Luther up ahead right now, about a 5-second gap between those drivers. But right now, 29 minutes into this 45-minute race, there's still plenty to play for, so we might see some battling between Olsen and Luther by the time this race is done, some more inter-car mingling. I mentioned earlier in qualifying how the 3 Porsches, the first 3 positions were Porsches, and the 3 positions after that were Ferraris, and then the 3 positions after that were BMWs. Right now we have a small downsized version of that, as we have 2 Porsches currently running 1-2, then a Ferrari 3-4, and then a BMW 5-6. So we've got some nice intercar battling here, and it's just been some great stuff here. So if anyone's watching on the YouTube chat, 30 minutes, it's definitely made a great impression this series has in its first 30 minutes here on Apex Racing TV.
Johnson's had a few issues recently. I think he had a bit of an off-track excursion previously, saw himself lose a few seconds, and recently had a little skid into the dirt, acting as a bit of a lawnmower for a second, but kept it clean, and I think is trying to catch up to haul and dive the BMWs. Still some time, and let's take a look back at that incident from Johnson earlier.
We'll get to see whether or not there's some simple lawn mowing, very easy to do at a track like this with not a lot of asphalt runoff to speak of, just a simple spin there coming through turn 13. That's a very tricky corner to make a mistake on. Your car is hopping quite badly. It feels like you have a pogo stick attached to the rear of your car. It's bouncing so badly, so that's a very easy corner to make a mistake on. And unfortunately for Brandon Johnson behind the wheel, that 937 Porsche, that catches him out badly in turn 13. That's, I believe, the first mistake that we've seen coming through turn 13. Usually the trouble spots for these drivers have been turn 15 and 16, so that's the first mistake we've seen come out of any driver through T13. So might see some drivers making a few mistakes. They might be a little bit tired from the first 31.5 minutes of this race. They might be seeing that checkered flag come in, and they'll definitely be pushing these cars a lot more than they were at the start. They're seeing that checkered flag come, and I think these drivers are definitely going to be trying to push their cars even more and push their competitors as well to try and get the best position they can.
Keep an eye on Luther, currently trying to reduce the gap between himself and Bellinger. His last lap was a 2:03, so only 3/100ths on that lap away from becoming the 3rd driver to break into the 159s. Meanwhile, Bellinger was 2:38, so 3/10 gained. Only needs to do that a few more times before we start to really see a battle brewing.
And the biggest thing with that breaking into the 2-minute barrier, as you can see the fastest laps right now, it's Hovesen who's dominated this race. He has the fastest lap in pretty convincing manner right now, a 1:59.107, which is over a half a second clear of the next fastest car on track at a 1:59.5. So that's a very convincing lap there from Hovesen, who grabbed the pole position by a fairly wide margin and currently holds the fastest lap by a pretty wide margin as well. In this series, we do give out, I believe it's 5 bonus points for whoever gets the fastest lap in this race. Actually, wow, Hovesen improves on that time even more, a 1:58.8, a 1:58.836 to be a bit more precise there. So Hovesen improving on that gap for fastest lap even more. That was a brilliant lap from him.
Brilliant, just brilliant. I mean, wow. Did we even see any practice laps get under 1:58?
Yeah, and unfortunately for this guy, not sure why he skipped out in practice, but as I just said, he skipped out in practice since a single practice time, then went out in qualifying, grabbed the pole position, and right now he has stomped his boot on the rest of the field. He has crushed them like a roly-poly that you'd see on a concrete block right outside of your house. So Hoverson has put together a fantastic drive, setting in quick laps after quick laps, and even though he has a massive gap right now to the next driver, it's just 16 seconds, over nearly 16 and a half seconds between Hoverson and Bellinger, but despite that, he is still going for these quick laps, just at the fastest lap of the race last lap, and from the onboard that we see now, I think he is pushing even more to try and best that. That would be impressive. I don't think there's too much more time for Hoverson to try and gain, but who knows? Maybe if he pushes that car even more, we could see a 158.6. Maybe he could. It's probably very rare. I don't think it'll probably happen, but if he could get the fastest lap by 1 whole second, that would just be a massive statement from Hoverson to kick the season off.
Yeah, it certainly would. And meanwhile, looking a little bit further down the field at Jake Luther, just broke into the 159, so the 159.98. That is his fastest lap, and he is now under 4 seconds away from Bellinger. So while the battle for the lead may be pretty securely in Hoverson's hands, if he's able to keep it clean, we could see a lot of fighting for P2 later down the line because Luther is in a rhythm.
Yeah, Luther is putting in some good laps. A lot of these drivers, the top 3 drivers, are really in a league of their own at the moment. Luther is pulling away from Olsen. I said a few laps ago how that gap was about 5 seconds. It's now stretched to a little over 6 seconds. So that gap is spreading out. The whole field is spread out a little bit, though we do have some very close battling up towards the midfield. It's the other drivers battling in 9th, 10th, and 11th. They're about a half a second separating all of them, so that's some close stuff. We also have some close stuff with Justin Hall, I believe, as well. So we've definitely got some close battles throughout this field, but right now the battle that we are looking for is a battle to try and snag that fastest lap and see if any more drivers on this grid can break below a 2-minute mark.
So we do have a little bit of action brewing. Hall and Barrera, the 2 BMWs, battling it out. It'll be Hall looking for a little bit of a dive around the outside as we get into the corner. Always tough to battle against a driver literally nicknamed Dive Bomber, because that can tell you just how aggressive they are. And the move doesn't work yet from Hall, but Hall should certainly have a few more opportunities left to go. It was 4/10 quicker last time. And now we'll have another chance as he continues to follow. How good is his exit? How good is Barrera's exit? They've got space to fight. 5 seconds back is Johnson. So even if they battle, it won't be like Johnson can really get that close, but maybe it helps Johnson gain about a second to the fight for P5. Hall following as we set up for the left-hander. Trying to stay close. Nothing down the inside, but maybe had it in the back of his mind. We continue through this windy section, and now the very deep turn into the right-hander. How is the exit? Not going to be good enough yet. I don't think he's got slipstream to seriously make a challenge, but that's not going to stop Barrera from defending all the way into the apron.
Running well past the white line there, blocking off that move there. The slipstream is still extremely important, so Justin Hall is still going to be in the catbird seat to try and pull off a move going into turn 1. But again, when you're battling a driver who's literally nicknamed in iRacing the Dive Bomber, it's definitely not going to help your case when you're trying to gain another spot. I think that's a just absolutely awesome name, Justin Dive Bomber Barrera. I think we could just call him Dive Bomber Barrera, because that sounds absolutely awesome. Sounds like a nickname you'd see in a movie, maybe a Days of Thunder remake, possibly. So we've got some awesome battling here. They were battling during the pit cycle, and they continue to battle now. At this point, we are less than 10 minutes away from seeing the checkered flag for the opening race of the S1 series here at Sebring, and it's just been fantastic racing up and down the field. We've got field shuffling here. We've got a battle here right towards the end of the top 5. We've got some battling outside the top 10, but this is the one we're focusing on right now. Dive Bomb Barrera and Hall are going side by side, but unfortunately for Hall, he just cannot get the move done going around, trying to go around the outside, going into the hairpin at turn 7. So unfortunately for him, he stays behind the driver ahead.
There may have been a little bit of contact between the two, and that should increase as we wind down the minutes and wind down the clock to the end of round 1. Hall still looking, but Barrera doing a great job of just holding that inside. He knows that it's a lot harder to overtake around the outside, but the big thing is it isn't impossible. given enough tries, and Hall will be able to get the move done. Another chance. How is the slipstream coming out of this corner? Not good enough. He's going to have to wait. We get through this windy section one more time. They are still nose to tail, back and forth. Hovesen, a new purple lap, 158.7. If that hasn't secured the fastest lap, well, I'm not sure what will. Now going down the back straight again. Will this be the run that Hall needs? Get some slipstream following on the dirty apron. Barrera defending up high. Hall is going to commit down low. He just backs out as he goes a little bit deeper to avoid the contact. Barrera holds on, but the fight is not done yet. And they are going to keep battling as they get through that next corner. A little more space to breathe for Barrera.
Ooh, Justin Hall went really wide coming through the sunset bend there of turn 17. Nearly ended up in the barrier, had to lift out of it quite badly coming through that corner. So unfortunately for him, he loses a lot of time, but I think that battle is definitely not over yet. Still a lot more time to play here. Right now we've got about 5.5 minutes left to go in this race, and I think Justin Hall, one saying that's probably echoing through his mind right now, is fighting fire with fire. To beat the dive bomber, you might have to go for a dive bomb yourself. So we might see a balls to the wall move from Justin Hall to try and get that move done to break into the top 5 and beat Justin Dive Bomber Barrera. That'll be a nice battle to watch. But we've got some more battling farther towards back. It's not really a battle. These drivers are a bit of a peloton. You could call it a peloton. You could call it a train, whatever synonym you want to use to describe this very close pack right now. You can put them all under a blanket. They're still spread out a little bit, so we're not going to see some moves from here anytime soon, but I think the field is spread out a little bit. The field has calmed down a little bit. We saw some chaos early on this race. Actually, never mind. We're seeing the battling continue here. It's flared up between Justin Dive Bomber Barrera and Justin Hall. We've got a battle of the Justins and a battle of the BMWs. Justin Hall is going to look for a move going down the inside of turn 14. That's very bold. That's a very opportunistic place to try and go for a move. He's going to try and stick it around the outside as they go onto the brakes going into turn 15. But for Justin Hall, he has to back out of it once again. Just Dive Bomber is very heavy, and he's the last of the late breakers in that battle there.
Yeah, and you know, now keep an eye on Johnson. He's in the camera view, only 2.8 seconds back, because they are starting to slow down as they fight back and forth. Hall looking for something. Is he going to commit down the inside? No, that's only a lunge you make for that final corner on the final lap. But as Luther and Bellinger get closer, Johnson could even make this a 3-car fight. But this is a lot better coming down this long finish line straight for Hall and Barrera. Is there going to be something open against the Dive Bomber? Moving around the outside is Hall. How deep will Barrera go? Barrera sticking to that inside, and he'll hold on to the position for the moment. But again, as the time winds down, there will be more desperation and potentially more cars joining the fight. The last lap for Barrera, 101 or 201.96. Hall, 201.41. But for Brandon Johnson, 2 minutes and 69, not held up by the fight.
Might have to play the Jaws theme to see Johnson close in on this fight, because those two are driving really hard. They're just battling each other. That's all they can think about at this moment, is just holding each other off. Certainly, Dive Bomber Barrera is looking to hold off Justin Hall, who he hasn't been able to pull off a fantastic move yet, but he has just been resilient. He has stuck to it, and probably by the end of this race, he'll definitely try and look for another move. I think with that battle, we'll have to wonder what corner Hall is going to look for the move on, because I don't think he'll try and do it coming around the final corner. I think he's going to have to peek a wheel and try and go for the dive going down the inside at turn 16. I think that will be the move to pull off with that battle. What do you think, Taylor?
Yeah, I think so as well. If he wants to get by Barrera, he's going to have to be aggressive, because Barrera has been very aggressive, very defensive. And again, it is definitely, I think, fair play, but Hall, if he wants the position, it's going to be how much is he going to want to risk in terms of contact. They are still so close. The battle for second also still close. And look at them all the way back on the apron again. Barrera, he is not going to give up the inside line no matter what. Hall is going to need a really good run or a really good dummy to find the space down the inside if he wants to make a move work. But it's not going to come just yet. And now he might be setting up another corner down the back straight. Skalny now maybe getting in a fight with Johnson, as Johnson's been struggling to gain a little bit more time. Could be a 3-car battle as we go down the main straight right here. It's going to be Alvis also in the fight, but Skalny looking to the inside, nothing doing yet. going into the turn. That's turn 1, and they stay behind just for the moment. But again, this fight is going to be heating up. They're going to be fighting for P8. But again, a lot of entertaining action to go. Half a second separating Bellinger and Luther. That'll be another exciting fight to keep an eye on, as there is Kliss going a little bit wide, still trying to fight back against Italiotis. And now we'll gain a little bit of time after Italiotis goes wide.
Kliss, the one driver competing in this race from the UK, he is running basically at midnight, but the tiredness that he is probably feeling is not stopping him from battling with Adelos. That's a very close battle. They've been swapping positions multiple times while we are following other battles. This is the one that we've been following pretty much throughout the last few minutes of this race. I believe we're coming towards the end. We're 44 minutes into this 44 minutes in to this 45-minute race. I believe they might be taking the white flag this time around. And this is still extremely close. Justin Hall, he's got to be wondering, like, the risk versus reward relationship for going for the move. I'm sure he definitely wants to get that pass done, because I'm sure he is sick and absolutely tired of seeing the back of Barrera's BMW, because he's been stuck behind it for pretty much this entire second stint. So he's looking for any way to get past Barrera, but Barrera just knows exactly where to place that BMW of his and hold off into that position. So this will be the great battle to watch here. They're still very close there. I believe Hall sticks it going around the outside. That was a very strange move there. He pretty much did on exit. They're going to be going side by side, going into the sunset bend. Hall will have the outside. Dive Bomb Barrera will have the inside. It will be the last of the late breakers. I believe Barrera is once again going to pull off that move. I believe Justin Hall ate some few cones coming through sunset bend there. So that battle continues to flare up, where I believe we will be starting the final lap this time by. Yep, you can see Flagman is waving the white flag, so it's one lap to go for these drivers. The battle up towards the front is really fizzled out. That's just spread out so much, but this is the battle that we gotta watch for, the battle for the final top 5 position. This is extremely close, and I think it's gonna come down to the wire.
It certainly will, and there is a little bit of action further down, but yeah, I think you can tell just the animosity growing between Barrera and Hall. I don't think that'll be Hall's last chance, even though he's now about 4/10 away. There was a little bit of contact and multiple stints. When you were saying that interesting move when he was getting around the outside, that was actually off a little bit of contact, and now it looks like that Barrera may have blinked out for a second. This is going to make things harder. He is back, and that gap is still decreasing. A nice little bit of a battle here in the peloton, as you've called it a few times. 1.5 seconds back from this gap. If there is something too aggressive, there could be a crash. But meanwhile, we take a look. It's Gregory Hovson going into the final sector, getting ready to try to secure a round 1 victory. A flawless performance today. A 1:58.77 lap. A stellar start to the season, and here at Sebring, it's Gregory Hovson with Delta Sport taking the checkered flag and the victory. And a lot further down the line, second place is still not set in stone. Well, look at that. He set another fast lap.
Yeah, just absolutely dominating performance there from Hovson. He started from the pole, but it's not over yet. There's a battle between P2, between Luther and Bellinger. They get very close. I believe they made contact coming through Sunset Bend, and they make contact again coming out of it. This is going to be a drag race here between these drivers. I believe that Luther is going to pull ahead. That's 0.03 of a second separating those drivers at the end. That's still very close, and the battle that we were following for quite a long time there is between Justin Hall and Justin Dive Bomb Barrera. But that battle is going to fizzle out. Unfortunately for Hall, he's going to stay behind. He's looking for any way to get past there. But unfortunately for him, he is going to stick behind him and end this race in the P6 position. That was some fantastic racing all throughout those 45 minutes. That was amazing to watch.
Yeah, a close fight to the line, but Barrera is able to weather the storm, but definitely no love lost, and I expect Hall will be hungry next week, or actually in 2 weeks' time, for some revenge. But yeah, going back, what a final corner between Luther and Bellinger. I said to keep an eye on. That could have been a fight for second place, and it indeed was. To the line, 0.03 of a second is what separated Luther and Bellinger for the second spot on the podium, because this man, Gregory Hovson, was very clear and very alone at the top of the standings.
He had a fairly quiet race, all things considered, but it's not over yet. I believe we have some more battling here. This is Jake Luther just going very fast on this final lap. Got my adrenaline raised there a little bit as we saw Luther going very fast coming through the turn 11-12 section there. So he's just having a very quick cool down lap. That was fantastic stuff there. That was as close of a battle, that was as close of a drag race you can have, because by the time those two made contact coming out of that final corner, it was a drag race between Luther and Bellinger, and thankfully for Luther, he gets that position, and just by the slimmest of margins too, as you said, 0.003 of a second separating those drivers. 45 minutes at 60 seconds a minute. That's just so many minutes, so many seconds, and it comes down to 0.003 of a second, probably a few inches separating those drivers by the end of tonight's race. That was absolutely incredible to watch, and I hope the people watching at home were very entertained by that race as well, because I'm sure I'm speaking for myself, I'm sure I'm speaking for you, Taylor. That was amazing to call.
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, you always want a little bit of action, and on the last lap, oof, 2 battles going to the line. I mean, it was 1 lap to go where we saw the final series challenge from Justin Hall on Barrera, and that was such an entertaining fight. And right at the end, Luther stealing P2. A lot of fun storylines as the cars will enter a caution formation to make their way back to the pits. But yeah, indeed, Ron, what an incredible opening race to the series here on Apex Racing TV. And I am looking forward to a Wednesday in 2 weeks' time when we are back.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That was amazing. And if any of you, the viewers, want to tune into the rest of the season, which I'm sure you want to, you will be missing out if you decide to bail out on this series after just 1 broadcast. If you want to stay with us, that'll definitely be the smart decision to make, and you can join us in 2 weeks' time at Road America for the next race of the season at 9:10 Eastern Time, 6:10 Pacific Time, if I can get all my times organized correctly. That'll be on September the 27th, my apologies, at Road America, another fantastic American road circuit, so I'm sure we'll have some fantastic racing there. We might see a lot of battling there because we have some very heavy braking zones for those drivers to negotiate, so we might see some more awesome racing in 2 weeks' time when the series comes back, and then after that we'll be going to Mount Panorama to kick off October, and then we'll be going to Road Atlanta, another old school fantastic American racetrack with a very long back straightaway that they used to land planes on back in the day. So that'll be an amazing track. Of course, a host of Petite Le Mans, so that'll be a race I'll be looking forward to. And then you've got the Nürburgring to round the season off, and then Watkins Glen, you already declared your support early on this broadcast for the final 2 races of the season to see what kind of action ramps up in those final 2 rounds. We're going to get a look at the championship results here. And I was too focused on the schedule ahead. We can focus on ahead later on after I go through the other results here. So it's Gregory Hoveson pulling on a fantastic drive, getting the fastest lap by a country mile and winning by a country mile, 26 seconds over Jake Luther in the Ferrari. He ends up in P2 with Olivier Bellinger in P3. Then we have Jesse Olsen in the 4th position, Justin Dive Bomb Barrera in 5th, who had that fantastic battle with Justin Hall. They end up in 5th and 6th respectively. That's Brandon Johnson in P7, Ryan Scalani in P8. That's Matthew Perrin in the 9th position. That's Bradley Alvins rounding out your top 10. And looking through the rest of the field, we have Tyler Finley, Eric Bialata, Donnie Greenhouse ending up in P13. He had a quiet race, didn't see too much of him. He ends up in P13 with Robert Elder in P14. Then we have Adelotis in P15, had a few mistakes and got caught up in an incident as well, so he ends up in 15th, with Paul Joseph Cliston 16th, running out of the UK, so he might be going to bed after this, but he put on a good drive, had a great battle with Adelotis throughout that race, throughout the closing stages. He ends up in P16. And that's Christopher Cassano in 17th, Eric Latsky in P18. And looking through the rest of the drivers, that all ended up a lap down. Shane Brown in 20th, Shamdur Dehinza in 21st. He was involved in an incident. Unfortunately, Simon Attrill, the man in charge here of the S1s, had a very difficult opening race of the season, got caught up in a few incidents, and just at this track it's very easy to make a mistake, so you can't really blame him. I've definitely made my fair share of mistakes around here, but looking through the results, that was absolutely awesome to watch. What do you think, Taylor?
Yeah, it certainly was, and just a note as well, down the field, Italiotis, certainly someone to watch and we continue later on at the further rounds of the series, because he had a couple incidents that kept him down the field early, but finished with the 4th fastest lap at a 1:59.96.
Absolutely awesome racing here to kick this season off, to kick this series' coverage here on Apex Racing TV off. We thank you for watching. I thank Joshua Wilkie and yourself, Taylor, for joining me in the commentary booth, and Joshua for working all the cameras and everything. Certainly without those two, this broadcast wouldn't have been possible. And another two people that I need to mention are Dr. Drabber and Zine, who are the big financial promoters of the series. Without them, this series and these broadcasts will not be possible, so we thank them for their support. So we hope you enjoyed this debut broadcast here on Apex Racing TV for the S1 Racing GT3 series here at Sebring. It was absolutely awesome, and if you'd like to tune in at Road America in 2 weeks, you know where to find us. So for myself, Ron Mons, Taylor Stolworthy joining me in the commentary booth, and Joshua Wilkie doing a great job in the production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching us, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time at Road America. Have a great rest of your night.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.